It actually came out. After 10 years since the last Dead Island game, Dead Island 2 actually got released from development hell, and it's not complete garbage like everyone thought it would be. It's been so long that everyone legit thought that this game was never going to come out, and I'm not gonna lie, even I thought Dead Island was a dead franchise. But after playing hot potato with multiple developers and going through several delays, Dead Island 2 finally emerges from the purgatory of development, and I'm happy to report that this is surprisingly a fun game because usually when games go through troubled development cycles like this, they usually get shat out in a broken or an unfinished state. Now Dead Island 2 isn't some masterpiece of a game, and I don't think it's going to win any awards for Game of the Year, but if you want a decently fun, semi-open world zombie sandbox game to play with your friends, then this might be the game for you. Before I get into talking about Dead Island 2, I'd like to preface that I've never played Dead Island 1 or Riptide before, so I had no idea what I was getting into when I started up the second one. I didn't even know it was a loot-based RPG until I played the game. That's how little I knew about this franchise. But I intentionally did little research prior to playing Dead Island 2 so that I wouldn't get any false expectations. And now that I've played it, I can say that I'm pleasantly surprised at how this game turned out. Although it does have some areas where it's lacking a little bit, it still manages to captivate me the entire way through with its really addicting gameplay. The gameplay in Dead Island 2 is so freaking fun. And I can't talk about the gameplay without talking about how good this gore system is. Dead Island 2 has some of the best gore effects I have ever seen in a video game. These effects make it so satisfying to kill zombies, and I never got tired of killing them because there are just so many ways to deal with them that all uniquely give you different visual feedback based on what you used. For example, if you use a fire weapon on a zombie, your attacks will char their skin until they look like roast beef. Or how when you use a caustic weapon, you will literally melt their skin off their bodies and you can see their skeleton with their organs still being inside of them. But my favorite one is where you just straight up punch a hole straight through their skull. The zombies will dynamically react to what you hit them with, and they'll die in some of the most brutal, gruesome, and disgusting ways. It's so gross how they die, and that's what makes it so freaking awesome. Now as for the gameplay itself, it's pretty simple. You got a light attack, a heavy attack, some grenades, a kick, a special attack, and a fury mode. The amount of tools at your disposal to deal with the zombies are pretty limited, but the game makes up for it by encouraging you to utilize the environmental hazards all around you to your advantage. Literally everywhere you go, there's some sort of hazard within the environment that you can use to deal massive amounts of damage to the enemies. I really like this because it rewards you for being aware of your surroundings and for thinking about how to best use it as a weapon to mow down hordes of zombies. It also adds an element of randomness to each fight because you can never really plan on what hazards are going to be near you and how they might be used against you, always keeping the gameplay fresh and keeping me on my toes the entire time. Not only that, but there's a surprisingly good amount of zombie variety in this game that you can just brutalize. As you play through the game, it slowly introduces a new enemy type to you that progressively get more and more difficult to deal with. This way it always keeps the gameplay fresh without ever overwhelming you with too many new things. I also loved how much attention to detail the developers put into the zombies, and it shows here by how insanely good looking these zombie models are. Like, they're extremely good looking zombie models that dynamically change based on what you attack them with, and they even have different outfits based on what area they're in. I know this is such a small thing to praise, but it helps so much in immersing the player into this world. Like, the developers did not need to create a unique zombie outfit for this one specific jungle section in the Monarch Studios that you only see once in the story, but they did anyway, and I for one greatly appreciate the effort to keep the immersion. Disappointingly though, the bosses are a letdown in Dead Island 2. There's just a massive lack of unique boss zombies in this game because all of the bosses you fight in this game are just beefier versions of the special ones. Now I know they're meant to introduce a new zombie type to the player, but I wish this wasn't as far as the boss fights go in this game. Like, come on, really? They could even create a unique zombie model for the final boss of the story. The whole final boss fight just felt rushed because it was just another mutator fight that you've seen multiple times already in the story. I assume this was due to the developers running out of time because the final boss fight is just one massive nothing burger of disappointment. I legit thought that this was a normal boss fight because of how uneventful the entire thing was. It literally had no special gimmicks or attacks, and then when you unceremoniously kill it, the story wraps up right there. I know this is probably set up for Dead Island 3 or DLC, but I still can't help the feeling like they could have done at least a little more for this final boss fight. And I haven't even talked about how lackluster the story is, which I'll discuss in more detail in the later section. Now you can't kill the zombies without the pretty robust weapon variety that Dead Island 2 has. There are so many different types of weapons here to play with that you'll never get bored of the weapon sandbox. You've got guns, swords, clubs, hammers, knives, claws, spears, and so much more. As I mentioned earlier, this game is a loot-based RPG with a standard rarity system ranging from common to legendary, and the mobs will always drop random loot equal to your current level, so you'll never get something that's weaker than what you currently have. It's a functional system and it does the job adequately, but it's just really generic and it doesn't try to do anything special. You can, however, spice up your weapons a bit with some mods and perks, but the mods and perks are also pretty generic. They pretty much just make your weapon do a different type of damage with bigger numbers. There aren't any interesting mods that you can put on your weapons that really change up the way you play the game, so the modding system just becomes really boring and feels like a chore that you need to do whenever you pick up a new weapon. There were so many things that the developers could have added to change the way you play the game, but nope, none of that here. Not even the legendary weapons have any cool effects on them, and that's just really lame. What's not lame though is the skill card system. The skill cards here are actually really in-depth and allow you to build your character to best fit your playstyle. And surprisingly, there's actually a lot of build diversity here. There are 6 characters in the game that you can choose from, and they all cater towards a unique playstyle. For example, you got Bootleg 6ix9ine that specializes in stealth and attacking from the shadows, or Discount Junker Queen who specializes in dishing out damage and taking damage from zombies. Me personally, I chose the guy with the afro, Jacob, who specializes in high risk, high reward gameplay. I tailored my character to be more of a whirlwind of death that gracefully weaves in and out of attacks while dealing boatloads of damage themselves. In theory anyway. My gameplay has about as much grace as a gorilla in a tutu. Anyways, I just love how much build diversity there is in this game. And you can even make the game harder with the autophage skill cards that are these skills with really powerful effects that give you a massive edge in battle. But they have some serious drawbacks to balance them out while increasing your autophage tier, which is this tier system that gives you buffs to your awakened mode as you go up in the tiers, but it also gives you some heavy overall debuffs to your character. I really like this system because it gives the player the freedom to make the playthrough as difficult as they want, and it rewards them for doing so. This is actually a pretty genius take on a difficulty option because it makes the game harder without increasing enemy stats. More games need to have systems like this because this is just so good. The world of Dead Island 2 is actually really diverse as well. There's a variety of locations that you'll go through during the story of Dead Island, and they all look so beautiful. Even though these places are torn up and infested with zombies as far as the eye can see, there's still a lot of detailed stuff within these maps that just makes the semi-open world of Hell A really interesting to explore. Although the maps themselves aren't really that big, the game makes up for it by putting so much stuff around every corner. Whether you're breaking and entering $1 million mansions or taking a lovely stroll across Venice Beach's boardwalk, you'll find that there's so many points of interest and things to explore here. And that's because the stores and buildings you can enter are all filled with loot, so it never feels like a waste of time to explore every corner of the map to see what you can discover. What makes this world even better are the numerous wacky personalities that you'll come across who give the weirdest side quests. Although the side quest designs themselves aren't really anything that special, they're usually just go get X or go kill some zombies, but they're saved by the very entertaining characters that you encounter throughout the world of Hell A. From the douchey Hollywood celebrities to the Venice Beach gym rats to the potheads always higher than a kite. There are so many funny characters in this game that really turn it into a more upbeat and, in a way, a light-hearted zombie slaying experience. For example, there's this quest where there's this famous YouTuber who's trying to record some clickbait videos for her channel. So in order to do that, she gets you to kill a bunch of zombies for her in the most random ways so that she can get more views on her video. All the while she's saying the most random Zoomer, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter crap.
Hey super fam! It's about time! think all my followers were bots. So, where's our ride out? Private jet, chopper, jetpack?
Sorry, darling, but how can I be a follower if I don't even know your name?
Duh. I'm Amanda Styles, LA's top trending girl in the juicy flesh. But, oh, fuck! You didn't see my video? Thought I'd upload it for sure this time.
Ah, I getcha. You're one of them influencer types.
Yep. Catching this shit show on camera. When my videos of flying zombie guts go viral, they'll be racing to send it to choppers to save our butts from LA.
Ooh, plan-wise, that's fucking massive.
Right? Problem is, it's pretty hard to get good footage while killing corpses. Oh shit! Idea! We collaborate! We lure suckers up here, you finish them off Amanda style, and I get crystal clear shots.
Little Miss Styles, you had me back there at flying zombie guts.
Then let's fucking go! Blast some tunes and knock any loser that shows up off the motherfucking roof! Let them bodies hit the floor! And no swearing in the first minute. I'm already on 2 strikes.
And this quest stuck with me because I feel like this one's pretty meta. I feel like this isn't too far off from what someone would actually do in a zombie apocalypse. You know how kids are nowadays. Anyways, I love how none of the characters in this game really take the zombie apocalypse too seriously and are still their weird selves with all the chaos and death going on. The comedy is one of the best parts about this game because it made this game feel more like a Borderlands game, but with zombies.
I got a bigger game than you, I got a bigger game than you, I got a bigger...
Despite the setting being in the middle of a zombie apocalypse with everything either destroyed, looted, or dead, Dead Island 2 still manages to look really good. The graphics for this game ironically look beautiful because the color palette that the developers use here are more vibrant and saturated colors, which really do well in creating a more upbeat vibe for this game that contrasts with the horrors that are going on around you. From the streets of Bel Air to the Venice Beach to the runway at Hollywood Avenue, these maps look stunning. Not only do the maps look great, but all the textures for the characters and weapon models are also insanely detailed. They even made detailed models for the individual organs you pick up in your inventory, and I think that's so cool how much passion the artists have put into creating the models. They even added day and night versions to each map, which even though they function more as an aesthetic preference, they change the entire mood of the game. You see, while in the daytime, it's all sunshine and rainbows, at night, it's more tense and unnerving because the zombies look a lot more horrifying when shrouded in darkness. Speaking of horrifying, even though Dead Island is barely a horror game, there are some maps that kind of brought the horror back into the game, and those were the underground segments. These parts were such a drastic change from the happy-go-lucky zombie killing up on the surface, and it goes back to the more tense and horrifying roots that the zombie games are known for. It's a nice change of scenery for the game, even though these maps were my least favorite because of how narrow they were. So we've talked about the good parts of Dead Island 2, now we have to talk about the not so good parts, and that's the story. To call Dead Island's main questline a story is pretty generous. It's more like a bunch of plot points poorly stitched together to create something that barely resembles a story. When we start the game, we're introduced to some of the main characters like Emma John and Sam B, who really don't do much in the story. After you meet these characters and talk to them for a bit, you're just kinda let go to do your own thing again. And for the next 6 hours of gameplay, you're off helping random survivors until about the halfway point in the story where they actually start to drop some important plot points on you. Unfortunately though, the game never really does anything with these plot points until the very end of the game, which they still never really fully utilize. I won't go into story spoilers too much, but the ending section of this game was probably the weakest part of the story. The map was short and linear, there weren't that many quests, and the story left a lot more unanswered questions than it did to answer them in a really rushed cliffhanger ending. I guess this was because they were trying to set up for a DLC or a sequel, but this is such an unsatisfying conclusion to a story, and it just ends up leaving a sour taste in my mouth. Not only that, but there were just no interesting characters in the story. None of the characters in this game really made a lasting impression on me and were overall mostly forgettable. I know, Dead Island isn't about the story, but when it's so offensively incoherent and blatantly rushed, I just have to point it out. Also, there's no New Game Plus for some reason, which is a really big hit to the replayability of this game, and is a little disappointing for an RPG not to have this feature. Overall, if you just want to turn your brain off and kill some zombies with your friends in the most ridiculous and bombastic ways, then Dead Island 2 may be the game for you. The game looks absolutely amazing at times, and each map is chock full of little details and points of interest to explore. Its gameplay is extremely addicting and fun, with the best gore effects I've ever seen in a zombie game. There's a whole variety of zombie types in this game, and killing them never got old because there are just so many different ways you can kill them, with an even wider amount of weapon variety you can kill them with. And the skill cards here are really extensive that allow for a wide variety of different builds that you can play and experiment with. But unfortunately, Dead Island 2 suffers from a really generic RPG loot and modding system, a lack of good boss fights, and a really bare bones story. For what it's worth, I think Dead Island 2 is only worth the full price for a specific type of person who's a fan of the series or these type of games. For everyone else though, it's totally understandable if you don't think this is worth the $60 price tag and decide to get on sale or even skip out on this game altogether. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments down below and make sure to like, comment, subscribe for more reviews in the future. See ya.